Hey, it's Ryan here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the Valley of Death. Seriously though, it's a startup concept that basically refers to the amount of time it takes to get to break even. So you're losing money every single month, losing money, and then you get to this magical break even point where you become profitable and everything gets better after that. This is particularly relevant in the SaaS world because this concept applies to every single customer you have. So generally it costs quite a bit of money to acquire a customer up front. Then it's going to take you a number of months before all those subscriptions add up and that customer becomes profitable. So what we're going to cover in today's video is we're going to talk about how to bring that break-even point further forward so that you minimize the amount of time that you're spending in the Valley of Death, both on a per customer basis and for your business overall. Let's jump in. Okay, so the best way to visualize the Valley of Death and how to get through it faster, there's 5 key metrics that we want to keep track of, and we'll talk about these in a second. But in terms of actions, in terms of what you can actually do, I had a mentor once who described it like this. So imagine you're sitting in front of a control panel and there are 3 levers that you can pull to improve your business. Any one of those 3 levers is going to get you closer to this break-even point. And if you can pull multiple levers, you'll get there way faster. So thinking about your business in terms of how I can pull these 3 levers is going to be helpful. We'll talk about that in a second. So let's talk about CAC. So CAC is the cost of acquiring a customer. And the way you calculate that is you add up all the amount of money you spend on sales and marketing in a given period, say a month or a year, and then you look at how many customers you were able to acquire in that period. And you do the math on that and you figure out it cost me this much money to acquire a customer on average. There's a related concept which is the fully loaded CAC, which is where you factor in the salaries of your sales and marketing team as well. The reason that's important is that early on those salaries are going to account for a much bigger proportion of the overall CAC, so there's going to be quite a difference between your normal CAC and your fully loaded CAC. Later on, as you scale, the salary component is going to be relatively smaller, so you should see less of a difference between the normal CAC and the fully loaded CAC. But it's worth tracking both of those separately because especially early on you might find that your CAC makes sense, but when you factor in salaries, it doesn't. And so you'll either need to raise some investment or bootstrap or figure out maybe how to pull some of these levers a little bit faster to get you through that period. So the first lever that you can pull is your CAC, okay? If you can find some ways to reduce the cost of acquiring a customer, you're gonna shorten the amount of time that you spend in the Valley of Death and get to break-even point faster. So there's a few ways you can do that. You can maybe find some lower cost marketing channels. So if all your customers are coming from Facebook ads, for example, you might wanna see if you can switch to doing content, SEO, affiliates, partners, something like that, where you're gonna reduce the amount of money that it's costing you to acquire a customer. You might also want to invest a little bit in conversion rate optimization, making sure every step of the funnel is converting as well as it can. You may need to just hire a better marketing person or work with a better marketing agency as well if the current person who's responsible for that isn't quite delivering. So there's a few different ways that you can reduce the cost of acquiring a customer, but they mostly refer to the marketing methods and marketing channels that you're using. The second metric that you really want to track is the lifetime value, LTV. So the way you calculate the lifetime value on average is there's 2 components to it. The first one is the amount of revenue that you make per customer per time period, let's say months. And the second one is how many time periods you're able to keep them for. Again, so a good example of this, let's say that we are charging $100 per month for our SaaS subscription, and on average we keep our customers for 10 months. So our lifetime value is going to be $100 a month multiplied by 10 months, therefore our LTV is $1,000. So where this becomes really important and where this relates to CAC is those 2 components are lever number 2 and lever number 3. So lever number 2 is the amount of revenue that we're making per time period, and lever number 3 is the number of time periods that we're able to keep them. And where all that comes together is this 3-to-1 rule. So if you talk to any serious investor who invests in a lot of SaaS companies or anyone who's run SaaS companies before, they will always tell you about the 3-to-1 rule. And what that means is that you typically want your lifetime value, your average lifetime value to be 3 times the cost of acquiring a customer. And if you're able to hit that ratio, investors will be interested, and you'll be able to sell the business at a decent margin if you just for a decent profit, if you a decent multiple. Sorry, getting my words mixed up today. You'll be able to sell it for a decent multiple if you're able to maintain that ratio. If you're able to get it even higher, so your lifetime value is 4 times, 5 times, 17 times, you're laughing. You're going to be super happy about that. If your lifetime value is less than 3 times the cost of acquiring a customer, something is out. You're going to have to go back to your control panel, and you're going to have to pull some levers and try and aim for that 3-to-1 ratio at a minimum. Incidentally, if you've ever wondered why in the SaaS world, when you're working with affiliates, most affiliate programs will pay out sort of 25-30% of the lifetime value of a customer, it's to bring that in line with the 3-to-1 ratio. So there's a reason for that. If you've looked around and noticed that all SaaS programs seem to be 20, 25, 30% of revenue, that's why. The fourth metric that we want to track here is the payback period. So this is the amount of time it takes us to break even on a particular customer. So let's say our earlier example, let's say that our lifetime value is $1,000. We are charging $100 a month, and we're able to keep our customers for 10 months on average. Lifetime value is $1,000. If it costs us $500 to acquire a customer, then our payback period occurs in month 5. We are able to break even on a customer in month 5, and then anything after month 5 is profit. Happy days. But what if our CAC is $1,200? What if we have to keep a customer for an entire year just to break even on them? Well, right now, our ratio is all out of whack. We're never going to be able to build a successful business because we're losing money permanently on every customer we acquire. So if that's the case, we really need to slam on the brakes and pull one of or more than one of these 3 levers to bring it back into line, because we need to find a way to increase our lifetime value to more than $1,200. So CAC, if it takes us a year to pay them off, CAC is $1,200. We need to keep them for 12 months, or we need to increase the amount of revenue that we're charging, or we need to reduce our cost of acquiring a customer to be able to make it all profitable. So the final metric that you want to track is churn. Now this is super important in the SaaS world because your churn, you live or die by your churn rate. The average, industry average churn rate for SaaS is between 3 and 8% every month. So what that means is that every month you're going to lose between 3 to 8% of your customers. And that means that just to stay where you are, you're not even growing, you are just treading water and staying where you are. You need to replace those customers, so you need to be acquiring 3 to 8%. You need to be growing by 3 to 8% just to offset the churn. Now, at a really small scale, if you've only got 100 customers and you're losing 3 every month, it's fairly straightforward to be able to acquire another 3 customers. But when you're operating at massive scale, maybe it's not 3 customers, maybe it's 300 or 3,000 customers. It can be really difficult to find ways to acquire another 3,000 customers every month just to break even. So that's why tracking your churn rate is so important. Churn rate is kind of the opposite of this down here, the second component of your lifetime value. So if your churn rate's really high, that means your lifetime value is really a lot lower than it should be because you're not keeping customers long enough for them to become profitable. We had a guy in one of the sources in the StartupSauce SaaS founder community. When he joined, his churn rate was 25%. So he was losing a quarter of his customers every single month. So he had to go out and acquire lots and lots of customers just to stay still. He wasn't even growing. And he just couldn't scale his business that way. So when he came in, the main thing that he learned on one of those masterminds is like, dude, you've got to get your churn rate under control. So I think he got it down to about 10% now. And even then, that's still a little bit higher than this ratio here, but it's much better than when he started. So he's kind of getting to the point now where he can actually invest in marketing, grow a bit more, and actually start scaling his business. He wasn't in a position to do that because his churn rate was too high. If your churn rate is 25% or it is really, really high, then you've got to do something about it. So you might want to look at onboarding your customers better. You might want to look at the kinds of customers that you're bringing on board. Maybe you want to focus on ones that are a bit more cashed up. They're less likely to leave. They're more likely to stick it out long term. You might want to look at improving your product. You might want to include rolling out additional features and functionality that people are looking for. You might want to include improving the UX just making it easier for people to use them. Maybe you want to include better support or better training, but whatever it is, there are a whole bunch of ways that you can reduce churn, and you need to be looking at all of them until you get to that 3 to 8% range. And then you're pretty happy. Then you can look at, if you've got your churn to 3 to 8% and you're fulfilling that 3 to 1 ratio there, you're in a good place. Keep on scaling until you can't anymore. That's a good place to be. Okay, so a quick little summary of everything that we've covered in this video. So the valley of death is that awkward time period where you're losing money every month, and we want to get through that as quickly as possible, both for your overall business, but also on a per customer basis. You want to get to a point where customers are profitable as soon as you possibly can. So there's 3 levers that you can pull to do that. You can decrease the cost of acquiring a customer, you can increase the revenue per customer per time period, or you can try and keep customers for a little bit longer, or some combination of all 3. So you want to be tracking these 5 metrics because you will live or die by them. And you want to think about, if you're not hitting this 3 to 1 ratio, if your payback period is too long, if your churn rate's too high, what levers do I need to pull to get through this valley of death and get to break-even point as quickly as possible? Anyway, I'm Ryan Wardell. I'll see you in the next video.